All right. Australia will wake up soon, and then we'll get a bunch of them. That's right. Some of my best contributors on Super Chat are from Australia. Let's see. Yeah, so I want to talk about woke. How do we get out of this woke culture thing, phenomena, disgrace, challenge that we face? And so I read two articles that I thought were interesting on this. One by Tyler Cowen, who wrote for Bloomberg on the issue of woke culture and kind of how he sees it going away and what the process will be for it to go away. And then David Brooks. Peter Brooks is a foreign policy expert. David Brooks, who I generally really, really, really dislike and generally really, really, really disagree with on almost everything, right? On almost everything. David Brooks wrote an article. What's the article's title? This is how wokeness ends. And it is in the New York Times. It's an op-ed in the New York Times. He writes regularly for the New York Times. And David Brooks is like a real centrist. He was definitely one of the neocons, but was never really. He's kind of a watered down neocon, and he's become even more watered down, and even become even more centrist, and become. Anyway, he's become much more collectivist and much just not very interesting, I find. Anyway, this essay I actually liked. Brooke hates Brooks. Yeah, well, hate. I don't hate David Brooks. I just disagree with him. And then Tyler Cowen, the article cited Tyler Cowen's article, so I read Tyler Cowen's. No, not like the guys in the Dispatch. I actually think the guys in the Dispatch are excellent. I think the guys I disagree with them a lot, but the guys in the Dispatch are actually good on a lot of issues. David Brooks is almost never good on any issue. You ask and you should receive any issues with pronouncing Rebecca Cow. Oh, you changed your name. Oh, good. Well, that's much better. I don't have a problem pronouncing Rebecca Cow. But what is your actual name, right? It's not Cow and it's not Rebecca. I know, Jennifer, you're not a guy. And there are a few others who are not guys. But the fact is that on YouTube, and maybe this is a result, I don't know what the result is. The fact is on YouTube, 92% of the people listening to Your Own Book Show on YouTube are guys. So I know Emily, Jennifer, and Ali are not guys. And I don't know about Rebecca Cow. You would think Rebecca was a girl, but I'm not convinced in this case. But, the fact is, according to YouTube, I don't know. According to YouTube, 92% of the people who listen to the Iran Book Show are men. Right? So when I call you guys, it's to the 92% that I'm talking to. And yes, guys, you have failed. I have failed. You should bring your girlfriends to listen. You should bring your wives to listen. And you should encourage women to listen to your own book show. I mean, I take it personally that, thanks, Cook. I take it personally that so few women listen to your own book show. Put me in charge of Israel, Gaza, or make anime. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I don't know what making anime means. I mean, other than making cartoons, but I don't, yeah. I guess he'd be tough. A lot of people I'd like to be in charge of Israel rather than the people in charge of Israel. Rebecca is Daniel, I think. I think that's Daniel. I think it's Daniel, but I don't know why he won't go by his name. He keeps coming out with these funny names. Why don't we go by Daniel Cow? Cook is part of the 92%. Yaron knows nothing of webbishness. Weebishness. I don't even know what that is. All right, so what David Brooks says, today's show is all over the place. So all over the place. I apologize, right? I mean, we'll see how viewership is for today's show. Oh, so Rucka told you about me. Well, good for Rucka. Maybe Rucka is the one who's going to bring women into objectivism and onto the Yaron Brook show. I obviously failed. Although women listen to more podcasts, which is interesting. They don't watch YouTube as much, but they listen to podcasts. And they're big on Instagram. And they're big on Facebook. But so it's like 50-50 on my Facebook page, but they're not big on YouTube. So you guys, women, explain yourself. Why is that? Well, but I'm talking to the wrong women because you guys are on YouTube. So what David says is basically this. This is a point that I made in my rational optimism talk that I gave a few years ago. The way woke culture goes away is that it becomes commercialized. It becomes just part of life. It kind of gets watered down. It enters into corporations. It shows up in advertising. I don't know. Did you guys see the semi-woke CIA ad, recruitment ad, where it's a Latina woman, and she goes through the fact that she's cisgender and intersectional, and she talks about the fact that she's got this, anxiety issue. I didn't understand that, because you'd think the CIA wouldn't want somebody who has a disorder with regard to anxiety. But maybe where she works, it doesn't matter. But the CIA now is using woke in order to try to attract people to come and work for it. Now, once woke becomes the establishment, I mean, not real woke, because it'll all be watered down. The CIA still needs people to do what the CIA does. And to the extent that they're going to be wokish about it, they're not going to last very long. Corporations, at the end of the day, need to make money. If they become too woke, thank you, Valdrin. Jeez, saved me hours with headphones on. If they become too woke, they'll stop making money. What ultimately saves America, and I think what ultimately will save America from woke culture, although every part of this erodes our culture, but what saves America is that people ultimately go to work. And they'll go to work, they're expected to produce. And at the end of the day, the production is related to profits, whether they like it or not. And yes, they can play their wokish games, and they can argue, and they can harass people. Maybe they can even dump people off of Twitter. But at the end of the day, contracts have to be signed. Customer needs have to be fulfilled. Suppliers have to be paid. Bills have to be paid. Work has to happen. Reality is right there. Thanks, Jeff. Jeff is trying to inspire you, together with Alejandrina, for a $2 a day. Just come in, support the show at $2. Anybody can afford that, and let's get the numbers up. Just $2. Anyway, that's Alejandrina's job, right? So the idea is ultimately that while woke is going to do a lot of damage, Certainly cancel culture will do a lot of damage. The profit motive, business, the need to be successful will, at least in the short run, overcome all that. If you think about all those schools that we talked about a few shows ago, all those schools that are teaching critical race theory and teaching all this woke stuff and teaching socialism and teaching all this garbage to these kids. And then they go, and these are all kids from rich, successful families. And then they go to college and they get more and more and more of it. But you know what? Most of those kids are going to go to Wall Street or to consulting firms or to technology companies or do their own startups. And they're very, very quickly going to discover that reality is right there. The reality doesn't care what color skin they have. That their bosses want them ultimately to get the client. That they need to do their job. They need to present that spreadsheet. That they need to actually produce. And people who don't produce don't get paid. And these are people that were brought up with parents who were very successful, who worked hard and succeeded and achieved something. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Not Another Guitar Channel. This is not another guitar channel, so no problem there. Thank you. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Thomas. Thanks, guys. Wokeness gets you nowhere. Now, woke up call, woke IP call. Wanda Freeman is riffing off of woke. You can study ethnomathematics, but try doing ethnomathematics at Goldman Sachs, and you're not going to last long. And at the end of the day, what saves America, really, from our educational institutions is a culture of business, a culture of profit, a culture of success, a culture of achievement, a culture of production. Now, granted, that culture seems to be under attack and seems to ethnomathematics. You don't know what ethnomathematics is? Ian, Mikat, where have you been? It's 1 + 1 equals, well, it depends on the color of your skin, on what side of the bed you woke up on what kind of mathematics you're doing, on, just saying 1 + 1 = 2 is so white mathematics. Right? It's so paternalistic. It's so cisgender mathematics. Right? So it's interesting. One of the things that David Brooks talks about, and I think there's truth to this. What happened to all the 60s radicals? All those 60s hippies, crazies, Woodstock kids. I mean, some of them, a small minority of them, became professors and are responsible for the woke culture we have today. But most of them grew up. Most of them got jobs. Most of them became the me generation of the 1980s, the yuppies of the 1980s, the Wall Street hostile takeover people of the 1980s. Most of them went on to work hard and have successful careers. I don't think they were ever completely happy because they're always going to be torn and they hold bad philosophical premises. But in terms of their actual behavior, their actual lives, they ultimately gave up the crazy hippie ideas, settled down, got jobs, and became productive. Right? Culture is downstream from education, yes. But culture is also downstream in a sense from business. In America, one could argue, and I have argued, and I do argue, that the place in which the traditional, that's a word I don't like, the place in which the traditional American sense of life, there was, we can do anything, don't tread on me, the individualist side, the can-do attitude, the productive side, the entrepreneurial side. That side of American culture is not preserved in our educational institutions. And it's not preserved purely in the culture. The bastion of that attitude, the thing that reinforces that attitude, the place in which it's still preserved and maintained is in business. Even relatively so-called woke businesses like Silicon Valley have a certain attitude to work. You're expected to get the job done. You're expected to do your programming. You're expected to work hard if you're in a startup. You're expected to deliver. You're measured by results. So while you hear a lot of this woke stuff is just horrible and disgusting and depressing and offensive and racist, its ultimate impact on the culture is reduced by a culture that almost every American matures into, and that is the culture of business, the culture of work, the culture of production. It's indeed in academia where it doesn't die, it's in government where it doesn't die, where production and achievement is not the standard. Right? And even there'll be a new fad in 5 years. It might be worse than this fad, or there might be a backlash for a while, and then it will be worse than this fad. But generally, because philosophy is not getting better, intellectual ideas are not getting better, the culture is going to get worse. But it's not going to get worse falling off of a cliff, which is what it feels like right now, right? I think we're much more likely to fall off a cliff economically than we are likely to fall off a cliff culturally. So woke will go away as people get jobs. It's internalized and watered down and commercialized by business and, funnily enough, by the CIA. Steven asks, have you seen the recent commercial for Levi? Teenagers say, quote, global clothing consumption has doubled in the past 15 years. We can change that. We can wear longer. We can buy less. And when we buy less, we can waste less. Yeah, in a commercial for Levi. So buy Levi jeans while you're buying less. I mean, it's part of my point is that it's so ridiculous. It's so absurd that nobody takes it seriously. That what does it even mean now? If corporations are talking like this, then who am I rebelling against? Right? And remember, it's Levi's. Levi's doesn't benefit from you buying used jeans or old jeans. It benefits from you buying new jeans, and everybody knows it. And it's advertising in order for you to think, ooh, Levi's are good. I'll buy more Levi jeans. More, not less. Because what the commercial doesn't say, and what the commercial should say, is global clothes consumption has doubled in 15 years. This is a sign that the world has become richer. This is a sign that poverty is declining. This is a sign that more people are entering the middle class. This is a sign that the world is becoming a better place primarily for the poor, who can now afford to buy jeans. Maybe not Levi jeans, but jeans nonetheless. So, I mean, it sickens me when you take a statistic like that, clothes consumption has doubled in so many years, and you disassociate it from what it actually represents. What it actually represents is prosperity. And what it particularly represents is prosperity in places that never had prosperity. It's not like Westerners are buying double the amount of clothes. Unlikely. It's the Chinese, Indians, South Koreans, Taiwanese are buying many more clothes than they used to, and on average, it's double. But you won't be told that, because nobody wants you to know that the world is actually getting better. Nobody actually wants you to know that there are far fewer poor people today than there were in the past. Nobody wants you to know that all these multinational corporations and globalization and business and sweatshops have actually made the poor richer. They don't want you to know that. They want to keep you ignorant. And this is left and right. Just like they don't want you to know that the middle class in the United States has shrunk because there are more people in the rich category. Just like they don't want you to know that standard of living and quality of life of Americans has gone up dramatically, including the poor and the lower middle class, because of the unmeasurable benefits of technology on life. So they all, left and right, pretend, oh, things are awful, so that they can gain more power, so that they can control you more, so that they can regulate you more, so that they can be the heroes riding to the rescue. But indeed, to the extent that there are problems in the world and in their economy, it's their fault. So they won't tell you the truth, and they don't tell you the truth. It's not a conspiracy. It's just they don't have any incentive to tell you the truth. Our politicians don't. They want you to believe the lies, but primarily they want you to believe the lies because they want you to believe that they are the only ones who can solve them. That's their key to power. If the world is doing well because of relative freedom, if the world is doing well because of trade, if the world is doing well because of multinational corporations and technology and sweatshops, then what do we need these politicians for? Let's just do more of that. But that's exactly what they don't want you to know. All right, let's...
And to begin with, I wonder if I can ask you to capsulize. I know this is difficult. Can I ask you to capsulize your philosophy? What is Randism?
First of all, I do not call it Randism, and I don't like that name. I call it objectivism.
All right.
Meaning a philosophy based on objective reality. Now let me explain it as briefly as I can. First, my philosophy is based on the concept that reality exists as an objective absolute, that man's mind, reason, is his means of perceiving it, and that man needs a rational morality. I am primarily the creator of a new code of morality which has so far been believed impossible, namely a morality not based on faith.
On faith?
Not on faith, not on arbitrary whim, not on emotion, not on arbitrary edict, mystical or social, but on reason, a morality which can be proved by means of logic, which can be demonstrated to be true and necessary.
All right, all right.
Now, may I define what my morality is?
All right.
Because this is merely an introduction. My morality is based on man's life as a standard of value. And since man's mind is his basic means of survival, I hold that if man wants to live on earth and to live as a human being, he has to hold reason as an absolute, by which I mean that he has to hold reason as his only guide to action, and that he must live by the independent judgment of his own mind, that his highest moral purpose is the achievement of his own happiness, and that he must not force other people nor accept their right to force him, that each man must live as an end in himself and follow his own rational self-interest.
May I?
All right, before we go on, reminder, please like the show. We've got 163 live listeners right now, 30 likes, that should be at least 100. I figure at least 100 of you actually like the show. Maybe there are like 60 of the Matthews out there who hate it, but at least the people who are liking it, you know, I want to see a thumbs up. There you go. Start liking it. I want to see that go to 100. All it takes is a click of a thing. Whether you're looking at this, and you know, the likes matter. It's not an issue of my ego. It's an issue of the algorithm. The more you like something, the more the algorithm likes it. So, you know, and if you don't like the show, give it a thumbs down. Let's see your actual views being reflected in the likes. But if you like it, don't just sit there. Help get the show promoted. Of course, you should also share, and you can support the show at JeronBrooksShow.com/support, or on Patreon or Subscribestar or Locals. And show your support for the work, for the value, hopefully, you're receiving from this. And of course, don't forget, if you're not a subscriber, even if you just come here to troll, or even if you're here like Matthew to defend Marx, then you should subscribe, because that way you'll know when to show up. You'll know what shows are on, when they're on. You'll get notified, right? So, yes, like, share, subscribe, support. Like, share, subscribe, support. There you go. Easy. Do one or all of those, please.